Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to read Chapter 3 of 5 People Who Died During Sex and 100 Other Terribly Tasteless Lists. If you've been following along, you'll notice that I've been wearing the same t shirt. Well, it's because I recorded this all on the same night and programmed the YouTubes to add it on a different date. Today we are reading Chapter 3 Courting the Muse, which is all about music. The Grim Rapper. 10 Most Dangerous Bands in Pop Music. The Byrds. 5 members deceased. Graham Parsons, drug overdose, 1973. Clarence White, killed by a drunk driver, 1973. Gene Clark, cardiac arrest, 1991. Michael Clark, liver disease, 1993. John Guerin, cardiac arrest, 2004. The Temptations. Of their original five-man lineup in 64 to 67, only one member, Otis Williams, survives. The others were Paul Williams, suicide shooting, 1973, David Ruffian, drug overdose, 1992, Eddie Kendricks, lung cancer, 92, and Melvin Franklin, brain seizure in 1995. The Grateful Dead, 4 members deceased. Leader Jerry Garcia, heart attack 1995. Ron Pigpen McKean, liver disease 1973. Keith Gorchuk's car accident 1980. And Brett Myland, overdose 1990. The New York Dolls, 4 members deceased. Bill Murcia, overdose 1972. Johnny Sanders, overdose 1991. Jerry Nolan, stroke, 1992, and Arthur Kane, leukemia, 2004. T-Rex, 4 members deceased. Mark Bolan, car crash, 1977. Steve Curry, car crash, 1981. Steve Pegreen took Cocktail Cherry, 1990. And Mickey Finn, natural causes, in 2003. Leonard Skinner, 4 members deceased. Ronnie Van Zant and Steve Gaines, air crash, 1977. Alan Collins, respiratory failure, 1990. Leon Wilkson, liver failure, 2001. The Platters, 4 members deceased. David Lynch, cancer, 1981. Nate Nelson, heart disease, 1984. Paul Robbie, cancer, 1989. And Toby Williams, emphysema, 1992. Allman Brothers Band, 3 members deceased. Dwayne Allman, motorcycle accident, 1971. Barry Oakley, motorcycle accident, 1972. And Lamar Williams, cancer, 1983. The Beatles, 3 members deceased. Stuart Sutcliffe, brain hemorrhage, 1962. John Lennon, murdered, 1980. And George Harrison, cancer, 2001. The Ramones, 3 members deceased. Joey Ramone, lymphatic cancer in 2001. Dee Dee Ramone, heroin overdose in 2002. And Johnny Ramone, prostate cancer in 2004. Last curtain calls. 10 showbiz exits. In 1673, overwhelmed by an unscripted coughing fit, the French playwright and actor Molière collapses during the 4th performance of his newly written Les Malades Imaginaires and is carried to his home in Rue de Richelieu, Paris, where he dies. The play is about a hypochondriac. In 1870, the traveling James Robinson & Co. circus and animal show spices up its advance for publicity for their inhabitants of Middletown, Missouri by having their band perform on the roof of a cage full of Numidian lions as the circus parades through the streets. Ignoring the repeated warnings that the carriage roof is insecure and the trick is highly dangerous, the show's manager orders the band to sit on it anyway. Sure enough, the roof gives way and the musicians are thrown into a cage of hungry lions below. The crowd looked on it as the lions tear legs and arms from sockets, and half-devoured, dismembered parts of the band are strewn across the cage floor. Of the 10 band members, 3 are killed outright, and 4 more are fatally mutilated. 1882. U.S. stage actress Annie von Behring stars in the Coliseum Theater in Cincinnati in the drama See Slocum, in which her real-life fiancé Frank Frayne is required to shoot an apple from her head with his back to her by pointing the rifle over his shoulder. The audience of 23,000 people watches the bullet hits her neatly in the forehead. She dies 15 minutes later as the audience files out of the theater. Sucks for that young lass. 1937, publicity-seeking Norfolk Vicar Reverend Harold Jumbo Davidson appears at Skegness Zoo reading the Bible from a cage he shares with a large but normally docile lion called Freddie. The dramatic stunt goes awry when the lion turns on the Vicar and mutilates him. The audience, thinking it is a comedic interlude, roars with laughter as Davidson lies fatally wounded in the hospital. The show promoter erects banners inviting people to witness the lion that injured the rector. 1943. During a radio live radio debate with 4 others about Adolf Hitler, Alexander Wolcott, author, critic, and radio personality, suffers a fatal cardiac arrest. Unaware that anything is wrong, hundreds of listeners phone in to complain that Wolcott, usually known for his stinging wit, has less to say for himself than usual. 1951, Ronald Reagan's finest moments on the silver screen in Bedtime for Bonzo are marred by the accidental death of his co-star chimpanzee the day before the film's premiere. In 1980, the Indian religious mystic Keshwari Baba attempts to demonstrate his powers of meditation by remaining buried alive in a 10-foot deep pit for 10 days. In a carnival-like atmosphere, the crowd of more than 1,000 people, including several officials from the town of Gorakhpur, watches Baba is ceremoniously lowered into the pit and the hole filled in behind him. 10 days later, the pit is reopened. From the accompanying stench, it was estimated that Kadeshwari had been dead for at least a week. In 1994, the Mexican entertainer Ramon Barrero, player of the world's smallest harmonica, inhales and accidentally chokes to death on his mouth organ mid-performance. 1996, Richard Roste, a tenor performing at the New York Metropolitan Opera House, suffers a heart attack and falls 10 feet from a ladder to the stage after singing the line "You Can Only Live for So Long" from the opening scene of Marco Polo's Case. It's a Czech opera about an elixir that confers eternal youth. In 2004, Al Dorvin, a longtime announcer at Elvis Presley concert, who coined the phrase "Elvis has left the building," dies in a car crash in California. He was on his way home from a convention of Elvis impersonators. All right, 15 artistic eccentrics. Friedrich von Schiller, the 18th century German poet and dramaticist, worked with his feet on a block of ice while inhaling the fumes of rotting apples. The French poet Bertrand de Neuville kept a pet lobster, which he took for walks around Paris on the end of a length of ribbon. He said the lobster was quiet and serious and knew the secrets of the sea and did not bark. Jonathan Swift, after completing Gulliver's Travels, wrote a treatise on excrement in 1733 titled Human Odeur under the pen name Dr. Shit. The Belgian French pulp fiction writer Georges Simenon, the creator of the pipe-smoking detective Inspector Maigret, was the world's hardest working author, typing at a rate of 80 pages each day. Simeon wrote well for over 400 novels. He said he found the strain of writing so extreme that it frequently caused him to vomit and made it essential for him to sleep with one or more women as soon as each book was done. However, Hitchcock phoned one day to be told by Simeon's secretary that he couldn't be disturbed because he had just begun a new novel. Hitchcock, knowing what Simeon was capable of writing 3 novels a month, replied, "That's all right, I'll wait." James Whistler, American born painter and graphic artist, once dyed a rice pudding green so that it wouldn't clash with the walls of his dining room. Opera composer Giacomo Meyerbeer, who lived in constant fear of premature burials, arranged to have bells tied to his extremities so that any movement in his coffin would make noise. So far, Meyerbeer has continued to decompose quietly without any sign of life. Robert Louis Stevenson, the Scottish author of classic adventure yarns including Treasure Island and Kidnapped, spent his early years reading parts of the Bible aloud to sheep. Talk about a real preacher there. Um, the German composer Robert Schumann had 2 imaginary friends called Florenstein and Eusebius, who gave him ideas for his scores. Schumann died in an insane asylum. In 1863, the author, Louisa May Alcott, got sick and described in her journal how she suffered from terrible hallucinations in which she repeatedly was molested by a big Spaniard with soft hands. She recovered and went on to write Little Women. Prolific 19th century French writer Honoré de Balzac believed that sex was a drain on his creativity. After months of abstinence, he was once tempted into a Paris brothel. He lamented afterward, "I lost a novel this morning." Samuel Johnson wrote Raserius in 7 days flat to pay for his mother's funeral. Arnold Benet's novel was renowned for their stunning attention to detail. Benet was complimented in his description of the death of Darius Clayhanger in the Clayhanger series, a death scene acclaimed as the most realistic of its kind in the history of English literature. Oh no! Give me a moment. I gotta fix. Alright, there we go. All right. Um, the 18th century artist Benjamin West had executed criminal, exhumed, and crucified. Had an executed criminals exhumed and crucified to see how he hung. Gustav Mahler, famous for his funeral marches, suffered from depression, hemorrhoids, and a morbid fixation on death. He wrote his first funeral march when he was 6, noticing that many other great composers, including Beethoven and Schubert, only lived long enough to compose 9 symphonies. Mahler thought it was unlucky to write any more. He thought he could cheat death by calling his ninth and great symphonic work a song cycle rather than a symphony. As soon as he had sketched out the first draft, however, he died suddenly of a stereotypical throat infection. W.B. Yeats was in the habit of trying to hypnotize hens. Killing Me Softly, 10 musical moments. 1968, the chairman of the People's Republic of China, Mao Zedong, bans the popular musical Sound of Music, describing it as a blatant example of capitalist pornography. In 1975, during Christmas celebrations, the president of Equatorial Guinea, Macias Nguema, orders his army to shoot 150 political opponents in the Malabo football stadium as the loudspeakers played Mary Hopkins' Those Were the Days. In 1978, pop producer Phil Spector, the perfectionist in the recording studio, holds a gun to the head of Leonard Cohen to achieve the precise vocal performance he is looking for on his album Death of a Ladies' Man. In 1992, five prison guards in Boise, Idaho maximum security prison institution are accused of taunting death row inmates by playing the Young song, "The Needle and the Damage Done," during an execution by lethal injection. In 1993, a Christian radio station in Vene, Veve, Indiana is burgled and set ablaze. Police say their prime suspect is a caller who became irate when the DJ refused to play Don't Take the Girl by Tim McGraw. 1994, in England, Dudley and District Hospital Radio banned the Frank Sinatra standard My Way from their airwaves because the lines "Now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain" are considered too discouraging for terminally ill patients. Other records suggested for the hospital danger list include Tony Bennett's "I Left My Heart in San Francisco," insensitive to coronary patients, and Andy Fairweather's "Lows," wide-eyed and legless, unsuitable for amputees. In 1994, a Beatles tribute band loses its George Harrison in a tragic highway accident. The Quiet Beatle, aka 27-year-old Donald Duncan Bloomfield, fell out of the back of the band's van on a highway while they travel home from a performance in London. The rest of the band drives for 25 miles before they realize that he is missing. In 1995, in Guani, New Zealand, a 21-year-old man claims he has a bomb and takes over a local radio station, Star FM, demanding to hear the song Rainbow Connection by Kermit the Frog. 1996, mourners at a funeral service at All Saints, Gravesend, England, are sorrowed when the church PA systems inadvertently relays Rod Stewart's hit "Do You Think I'm Sexy," including the line "If You Want My Body." 1996, an academic report called "The Effect of Country Music on Suicide" by two American sociologists, Stephen Stack and Jim Grundlach, proves a link between country music and losing the will to live. The study concludes that wherever country music is played, the suicide rate among whites is higher than average, independent of divorce, southernness, poverty, or gun availability. Uh, the shock of the new. 10 great moments in art. 1951, an abstract painting called "The Autumn Landscape" by Scottish artist William Gere wins a prize at the Festival of Britain, but is later denounced by the Daily Mail as a jam pot thrown at a canvas. In the House of Commons, Conservative MP Alan Gome Duncan announces the end of civilization as we know it. 1961, Pierre Menezoni, the leading light in the art movement Arte Porvora, exhibits a series of 1-ounce cans containing his own excrement titled "Artist Shit." In June 2002, the Tate Gallery in London announced that it has purchased a tin of Menezoni's feces for about $38,000. 1966, Hermann Nisch, Austrian action artist, guts a dead lamb in London while showing a film about male genitalia. The Times in London calls the event a brothel of the intellect. The organizers are persecuted and fined. 1971, American artist Newton Harrison stages an exhibition at the Hayward Gallery, London, called Portable Fish Farm, in which he plans to electrocute 60 live catfish. The show is canceled when comedian Spike Milligan makes his feelings known by lobbing a brick through the Hayward Gallery window. In 1989, French-American sculptor Louis Bourgeois, whose work most features severed penises and huge testicles hanging singly or in pairs or in bunches, exhibits a piece called No Exit, a stairway with two huge testicles restricting egress at the bottom, and one called Untitled with Foot, in which a baby is crushed by a large testicle. Yeah. 1989. Canadian sculptor Richard Gibson is tried at the Old Bailey in London and found guilty of outraging public decency by creating earrings from freeze-dried human fetuses. They formed a part of human earrings, a mannequin head with wig. Gibson is fined $900, but the case cost 36,000 to prosecute. 1994, Christian Lemaire's, a Danish artist, put 6 dead pigs in a glass case so visitors to Esper Gallery can watch them change color from piggy pink to black and in various shades of blue and gray. Artist declares it a triumph for people who value reality in art. The gallery owners declared a triumph over their old ventilation system, which was unable to cope with the stench. 1995, Gilbert and George, British artist, display 16 large glossy photos of themselves surrounded by a series of depiction motifs, including turd circles and the turd sculptures, what they call naked shit pictures, at the South London Art Gallery. The critic describes the work as almost biblical. 1998, California performance artist Zhang Huan takes off his clothes, smears himself with pureed hot dog and flour, then allows himself to be licked by 8 dogs in San Francisco's Asian Art Museum. Zhang says his aim is to explore the physical and psychological effects of human violence in modern society. The exploration ceases when one of the dogs bites him on the bottom. In 2005, an Argentinian artist, Nicolai Constantino, exhibits sculptures made out of her own fat, which was removed during liposuction. 4.5 pounds of fat are transformed into 2 sculptures of the female naked body, which are offered for $460 each. Neither has been sold. Entertainment and the F word. 10 great moments. 1965, British drama critic Kenneth Tyan, in the course of a live late night talk show, becomes the first man ever to say fuck on TV when he inquires, what exactly is wrong with the word fuck? 133 shot members of the House of Commons table 4 motions condemning him, and a Conservative member of Parliament insists that the fucker should be hanged. 1967, Michael Winner's film "I'll Never Forget What He's Nine" features Mick Jagger's convent-educated girlfriend Marian Faithfull saying the line, "Get out of here, you fucking bastard." 1970, Robert Altman's movie MASH, about the lives of the triage of doctors on the front lines of the Korean War, becomes the first Hollywood film to dare use the F word, although it was never originally in the script. 1976, UK punk combo, the Sex Pistols and a gang of suitably safety pinned hangers are invited to appear On a prime UK TV show tonight, presenter Bill Grundy, who hopes to inject some tension into the hitherto dull interview, quips, "You've got another 10 seconds. Say something outrageous." Guitarist Steve Jones takes up the challenge, noting that Grundy is a dirty bastard, a dirty fucker, and a fucking rotter. A nation is scandalized, and Grundy loses his job. In 1983, Brian De Palma's Scarface employs the F word a record breaking 206 times. In one scene, Tony Molina's girlfriend asks him, can't you stop saying fuck all the time?" During the live televised Wimbledon Tennis Championship, the world's top male tennis player, Nice Pete Sampras, is heard by photographers to admonish the court-centered crowd, "Take that, you motherfuckers," in 1993. In 1995, Martin Scorsese sets a new world record for the film when his film Casino employs fuck 442 times, 2.4 times per minute on average. In 2003, at the Golden Globes Award, U2 Hitman from Bono U2 frontman Bono describes the Gong Award for The Hands That Built America from the soundtrack of the film The Gangs of New York as a really, really fucking brilliant. Rolling Stone magazine reports that in response, 11 Republicans have sponsored a resolution demanding that broadcast regulators revoke the license of television stations that repeatedly air incident material. Meanwhile, a bill proposed by Congress, Doug Oze and Lamar Smith, aims to completely ban from all radio and network television broadcasts the word shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and asshole. In 2004, Elton John exchanging pleasantries with his host during a live morning radio show says fuck as the interviewer apologizes to his listeners. The veteran rock star asks if it's permissible to say the words wank, tits, bugger, and bollocks. 2005, at a Live 8 concert in London, in front of an estimated live worldwide TV audience of 3.5 billion people, rapper Snoop Dogg invites the crowd to join in by putting their motherfucking hands in the air like you just don't care. 10 rock and roll suicides. Sister Luke Gabrielle Nee Jeans Deckers, and aka the Singing Nun. A Belgian nun with an acoustic guitar provided an unexpected smash hit in 1963, Dominique. She left her convent to discover the swinging 60s, but her new career flopped. Facing bankruptcy, she took her own life by carbon monoxide poisoning in a double suicide pact with her lesbian lover. Joe Meek, 60s, record producer of the Tornadoes. Meek was unhealthy, fixated on his idol Buddy Holly. On his 8th anniversary of Holly's death, Meek shot his elderly landlady and then turned the gun on himself. Del Shannon, U.S. doo-wop idol, recorded "Hats Off to Larry" before blowing his own head off with a .22 caliber rifle. Ian Curtis, 23 years old, singer with the British band Joy Diversion, he hanged himself in his kitchen on the eve of their first big U.S. tour. John Ritchie, a.k.a. Sid Vicious, the Sex Pistols bassist, failed in 2 suicide bids while in police custody for allegedly stabbing to death his girlfriend Nancy Spugden, but successfully overdosed on heroin as soon as he was released on bail in February 1979. Paul Williams, a singer with the Temptations. Williams was found dead on the street, having shot himself a few blocks away from the Tamla Motown hit factory where he made his name. Richard Manuel, member of the band. Manuel's cast a cloud over the group's important 1986 reunion tour by hanging himself. in a motel room. Bloom, an American one-hit wonder whose crucial contributions Montego Bay was a hit in 1970. Bloom shot himself at the age of 28. Kurt Cobain in April 1994, the 27-year-old Nirvana singer who wrote a song called "I Hate Myself and I Want to Die," escaped from a detoxification center in Los Angeles and then shot his own face off. In the funeral service, his wife, Courtney Love, reads extracts from a suicide note days later. A 16-year-old girl in Turkey shot herself in tribute to Kurt. Jeff Buckley, the singer guitarist, drowned himself in 1997 in the Wolf River near Memphis, Tennessee. Buckley, who is said to have had a Led Zeppelin fixation, was heard singing a whole lot of love as he swam into the river. All right, 10 creative drunks. Ernest Hemingway, the Nobel Prize winning writer and adventurer, had an epic appetite for alcohol and women. As a war correspondent during World War II, Hemingway acquired a special alcohol ration and positioned himself on a bar stool in the Paris Ritz, conducting his affairs between Bloody Marys. He kept drinking despite a severe liver problem, but it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound that finished him off at his Idaho retreat at the age of 59. Raymond Chandler. Chandler took to crime writing after losing his regular job through drunkenness and absenteeism. He spent most of his adulthood in a drunken haze. In the words of his hard drinking fictional detective Philip Marlowe, alcohol is like love. The first kiss is matter, the second is intimate, the third is routine. After that, you take the girl's clothes off. Unlike Marlowe, Chandler was a troublesome inebriate who suffered blackouts, fell over, threatened suicide, and generally irritated his friends. Chandler's devotion to his infirm wife, Sissy, kept him on the wagon for a while, but when she died in 1954, he had the bottle and stuck to it, his health deteriorating rapidly. He died of pneumonia 5 years later. James Boswell, his friend and mentor Samuel Johnson, once advised him that not to drink wine is a great deduction from life. He took his advice to heart, partially to relieve the frequent bouts of depression, and partly to stimulate his appetite for prostitutes, a whoring rage that led to 19 venereal infections. After one of several drunken falls, Boswell remarked in his diary, "No man is more easily hurt with wine than I am." He finally finished the life of Samuel Johnson in 1791 between bouts of heavy drinking and died 4 years later of kidney failure at the age of 55. Dorothy Parker, her poisonous reviews as a drama critic in Vanity Fair cost her her job, but her reputation as the wittiest woman in the country gave her a permanent place at the famous hard drinking round table at New York's Alcuin Hotel. She often arrived at Alcuin lunches with a hangover, and she insisted I ought to be in the Smithsonian under the glass. Last night I was so drunk, she told her friends. I fell down and missed the floor. Her husband was similarly alcoholic and they were childless. A friend noted that she wouldn't have anything in common with the children because they don't drink. After four failed suicide attempts, she died at 74 when her liver gave way. F. Scott Fitzgerald said to write better drunk than most novelists could sober. He and his wife Zelda lived a riotous lifestyle through the Jazz Age, their partying supplemented by the phenomenal success of The Great Gatsby. Unlike his more accomplished drinking companion, Ernest Hemingway, Fitzgerald was an abusive drunk with a habit of embarrassing himself in expensive restaurants by throwing ashtrays before passing out. Fitzgerald wrote precisely in the first draft of an autobiography, drunk at 20, wrecked at 30, dead at 40. He wasn't far from the mark, as he went into terminal decline, ill, drunk, and unable to recreate his early commercial success, and died of a heart attack in 1940, aged 44. Edgar Allan Poe, a self-destructive poet and short story writer, was an impulsive binge drinker and probably a laudanum addict, though it didn't stop him from joining the local temperance society, giving lectures on the evils of drink. Poe attended West Point Military Academy and was expelled for gross neglect of duty. After appearing on a parade naked, except for a white belt and gloves, no writer of Poe's talent ever died lonelier or more pathetically. In 1849, he left his home to visit his friends in New York, but never made it. After a mysterious 5-day absence, he was found dying in a Baltimore gutter, suffering from delirium tremens. Jackson Pollock, the original piss artist. Pollock was almost permanently inebriated from the age of 15, which explains the frequent fights he got into and the habit of relieving himself in public. Although his incontinence occasionally came in handy, especially the time he set fire to his mattress and saved his life by urinating on it. It was rumored that Pollock would urinate on a canvas before delivering it to a dealer or a client he didn't like, which gives his habit of naming his paintings number one and number two new meaning. Pollock went on a wagon for 3 years from 1948 to 1951, during which time he created his best known abstract expressionist works. But sudden stardom caused him to lapse, and he hit the bottle again. In 1956, his wife, Lee Krasner, left him, and a month later, Pollock was killed after driving his car into a tree, killing one other passenger. Dylan Thomas, revealing his romantic image of the drunken poet, Thomas was often prone to exaggerating his own considerable drinking prowess. He liked to boast that he suffered from cirrhosis of the liver and a claim his autopsy eventually disproved. When he was drunk, Thomas was either a fantastic wit or a disgraceful bore, depending on your point of view. One evening, he suddenly stopped mid flow and observed, "Somebody's boring me. I think it's me." On his final trip to New York, he began drinking very heavily and was unable to stop throwing up during their rehearsal of Under Milkwood. He died at the age of 39 while taking advantage of the long drinking hours in New York before starting a lecture tour. On November 3rd, 1953, he staggered out of a bar and fell into a fatal coma. His last words were, 17 whiskeys, a record, I think. Brendan Behan, the greatest Irish playwright of the era, described himself as a drinker with a writing problem. Raised on whiskey by his maternal grandmother because it was good for the worms, Behan achieved public notoriety in a series of drunken public appearances, including a memorable live TV interview during which he didn't manage to speak a single comprehensible word. Behan was once hired to write an advertising slogan for Guinness and was given half a dozen kegs for their product for inspiration. After a month, the company asked the legendary writer what he had come up with. Behan replied, "Guinness makes you drunk." He collapsed in a Dublin bar in 1964 and died a few days later, age 41. George Jones. Jones is said to have had the best voice in the history of recorded country music. The tribulations of his booze-filled third marriage to fellow country legend Tammy Wynette was detailed in various duets, from "Can We Make It" in 1971 to "We're Gonna Hold On" in 1974. In an attempt to wean him off of liquor, Wynette hid his car keys, making Jones a house prisoner. Desperate for a drink, he set off for Nashville in the only vehicle he could find the keys for, his sit-down lawnmower. He was apprehended on the freeway. Jones was later twice convicted of drunk driving in Nashville, once following a televised police chase through the streets in 1983, and then again after wrapping his car around a bridge in 1999. 10 hard acts to follow. Ozzy Osbourne. No stranger to shock tactics, surprised himself on January 20th, 1982, during a gig in Des Moines, Iowa, when a fan threw a live bat on stage, and Ozzy picked it up, bit its head off, believing it to be a rubber toy. Ozzy underwent a course of rabies injections in May 1981 and before a record company press conference in Los Angeles. He repeated the trick by biting the head off of a live white dove. Tommy Minock, a variety artist who plied his trade in Trenton, New Jersey in the 1890s, allowed himself to be literally crucified on stage. As the nails were being driven into his hands and feet, Minock sang, "After the ball is over." American entertainer Orville Stamm, by way of encore, lay on his back with a piano on his chest, belting out, "Ireland must be heaven because mother comes from there," while the pianist bounced up and down on his thighs. Must have been fun. The original cast of Friends had a seventh regular member, Marcel the Monkey. He was fired because of his habit of vomiting live worms on the set. In 1996, Dora Oberling, a stripper from Tampa, Florida, cheated death when a dissatisfied member of the audience tried to shoot her. The bullet bounced off one of her silicone breast implants. Matthew Buchinger, a German living in the late 17th century, was a first all-around entertainer. He mastered a dozen musical instruments and was a fine dancer and a brilliant magician. He also was an excellent marksman, a superb bowler, and accomplished calligrapher. His chief claim to fame, however, was that he was 2 foot 4 inches tall and possessed neither arms nor legs. In September 1994, a glass eye worn by Armando Botelli shattered when a soprano hit a high note during an opera in Milan. Frenchman Joseph Bugial, a virtuoso of the anal accordion, earned fame and fortune when he, at the turn of the 19th century, as Le Petomane, while lying in the bath. Bugial made a remarkable discovery that he could modulate the sound with completely odorless farting. Bugial took his act to Paris, where he became an overnight sensation, outselling even France's favorite actress, Sarah Bernhardt. His performance included a series of imitations such as the sound of calico being torn, a cannon, an 8-day-old pup, a creaking door, an owl, a duck, a swarm of bees, a bullfrog, and a pig. He could intone by placing a small flute in his rectum by the light of the moon, and he could anally extinguish a candle at a distance of 1 foot. For an encore, Pujol inserted a yarn of rubber hose with a cigarette in one end on his rectum, drew on the cigarette, and exhaled smoke. The highlight of Pujol's spectacular career was a continental tour that drew in many of the crowned heads of Europe, although King Leopold II of Belgium felt obliged to see the show in disguise. When Pujol died in 1945, aged 88, he was succeeded by several imitators, including the female pedomane called La Mère Alejandre, who could imitate the farts of the famous and performed a series of entertaining occupational farts, including those of nuns and Freemasons. Wow. Her magnum opus, however, was her impression of the bombardment of Port Arthur in 1980s, an American pantomime known as Honeysuckle Divine could extinguish a candle at a flame of 2 paces and fart jingle bells. At the Organization of African Unity Summit meeting in 1975, Ugandan leader Idi Amin entertained his fellow African presidents by demonstrating how to suffocate people with a handkerchief. The actor Laurie Green had one of his nipples bitten off by an alligator while filming Lauren Green's Wild Kingdom. Essential Elvis trivia, the top 10 for the king. Before he discovered Elvis, Colonel Tom Parker's most notable success was Colonel Parker's Tansin Chickens, an act involved by persuading chickens to perform by placing them on electric hot plate. There's an estimated 85,000 Elvis impersonators worldwide. In the Islamic State of Mogadishu, Somalia, it is illegal to impersonate Elvis without a beard. Thank you very much. Elvis once ate nothing but meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and tomatoes. Mashed potatoes and tomatoes for 2 years. Elvis became addicted to a feed mint chewing gum while attempting to overcome severe constipation. Dr. Juga Homent, a Finnish professor, is the only Elvis impersonator known to sing his songs in Latin, including None hic alt numminquam, It's Now or Never. Next to sex and gluttony, the king's favorite nocturnal pastime was visiting the Memphis morgue to look at the corpses. He also liked to watch lesbian sex through a see-through mirror from his bedroom while nibbling on a bucket of giblets. Elvis was once injected with the urine of a pregnant woman as part of a fad diet. In July 1993, Air Force Major Bill Smith, a Texan, filed a lawsuit against Fort Worth against the estate of Elvis Presley. Major charged that Presley's estate had perpetrated fraud by keeping up the pretense that the country had died in 1977. The major complained that this had interfered with his attempts to sell his new book on Elvis's current whereabouts. Elvis's last meal was 4 scoops of ice cream and 6 chocolate chip cookies. This was Elvis's best ever career move. If he had lived, he would have almost certainly been bankrupt within 6 months. In 2006, his estate, including the famous Graceland Mansion, was estimated to be worth $150 million. Thank you. Thank you very much. 10 notable literary deaths. In 1156, Petrio Aretino, an Italian artist, poet, and critic, laughed so hard at a scene in a play involving one of his assistants that he fell off of his chair, fatally striking his head on the floor. In 1824, George Gordon, Lord Byron, catches a virulent form of rheumatic fever while rowing an open boat across a lagoon in a thunderstorm in Greece. In 1850, André del Balzac dies of caffeine poisoning after regularly drinking about 50 cups of black coffee per day. So the limit is 49 people, just so you know. For you coffee holics out there like my mother. Um, 1867, Charles Bouldier dies insane, paralyzed, and speechless at the age of 46 from the combined effects of syphilis, addiction to alcohol, hashish, and opium. 1900, Oscar Wilde dies in France under the assumed name of Sebastian Melmoth from an abscess on the brain, which had spread from the infected middle ear. Despite an operation by an ear specialist, when Wilde told them how much the failed operation had cost, he replied, "Oh well, then, I guess shall have to die beyond my means." According to an even wittier but apocryphal version, Wilde's last words were, "Either that wallpaper goes, or I do." In 1915, Rupert Brooke, who wrote, "If I should die, I think this only of me. Think this only of me. that there's some corner of foreign field that is forever England. Expires on a French hospital ship from blood poisoning. The result, an infected mosquito bite aggravated by sunstroke. In 1951, Arnold Bennett is taken by typhoid after cheerfully drinking a glass of tap water in a Paris hotel to demonstrate how completely safe it is. In 1950, the George Bernard Show falls out of the apple tree he was pruning at the age of 94. 1983, Sylvia Plath, American poet, gasses herself in her kitchen oven at the age of 30. In 1983, Tennessee Williams chokes to death on a bottle cap that accidentally dropped into his mouth while he was using a nasal spray. And 10 thoughts on Shakespeare. Voltaire. This enormous dunghill. Leo Tolstoy. Crude, immoral, vulgar, and senseless. J.R.R. Tolkien. I went to King Edward's school and spent most of my time learning Latin and Greek. But I also learned English literature, except Shakespeare, which I disliked cordially. George Bernard Shaw. With a single exception of Homer, there is no eminent writer, not even Sir Walter Scott, whom I despise so entirely as I despise Shakespeare when I measure my mind against him. It would be positively a relief for me to dig him up and throw stones at him. Walter Savage, Landor, British poets. The sonnets are hot and poultry. There is much condensation, little delicacy, like raspberry jam without cream, without crust, without bread. Dr. Samuel Johnson. Shakespeare has never had 6 lines together without a fault. Perhaps you may find 7, but this does not refute my general assertion. Robert Greene, an English playwright, an upstart now beautified with our feathers. Charles Darwin. I have tried lately to read Shakespeare and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. Samuel Pepys. And then to the King's Theatre, where we saw Midsummer Night's Dream, which I had never seen before, nor shall ever again, for it is the most insipid, ridiculous plays that I have ever saw in my life. King George III. This is not sad stuff. What? Sorry. Is this not sad stuff? What? 10. Hollywood. Suicide. Shootings. Bobby. Harry. The 27-year-old silent movie star shot himself while depressed after being overlooked for the lead in Way Down East in 1920. Carl Dane, the silent movie star overlooked when talkies arrived, and no one could understand his heavy Danish accent, went home and shot himself in 1932. Herman Bing, the comic actor, 6 years after providing the voiceover for the ringmaster in Dumbo, despondent over his fading career, shot himself in 1948. George Reeves in 1959. The original TV Superman, typecast and depressed over his inability to land another role, shot himself in the head in his upstairs bedroom of his Beverly Hills home while a party was in progress in the living room below. It's widely rumored that he believed he had acquired superpowers and accidentally killed himself trying to fly. Pedro Armendáriz in 1963, the actor shot himself 2 weeks after working on From Russia with Love. Gig Young, 2 years after receiving an Oscar from his supporting role in They Shoot Horses, Don't They? He shot his wife and himself in a suicide pact 3 weeks after their wedding day in 1971. Freddie Prinze, the comedian and star of the Chico and the Man, shot himself in front of his manager after a messy divorce in 1977. The verdict of suicide was later altered to reflect an accidental shooting due to influence of quaaludes. Despite his suicide note, I must end it. There's no hope. I'll be at peace. No one had anything to do with this. My decision, totally. Donald Redberry, B. Western cowboy star who, despite a role in Little House on the Prairie, shot himself in 1980 because his fans had deserted him. Jean Eric Hexum committed accidental suicide in 1984 when he shot himself with a pistol loaded with blanks on the set of the TV spy show Cover Up, noting, "Let's see if this will do it." A concussion forced a chunk of his skull into his brain. He died 6 days later. Hervé Vachille, the diminutive Fantasy Island star, brought an end to his life by shooting himself in the stomach in 1993. He muffled the gun under two pillows so he would not disturb his sleeping girlfriend. 10 literary drug abusers. Charles Baudelaire, hashish and opium addict. W.B. Yeats, addicted to mescaline, a hallucinogenic derived from Mexican cacti. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, opium and laudanum addict. Thomas De Quincey, opium and laudanum addict, the author of Confessions of an Opium Eater, quaffed up to 8,000 drops of opium and 6 or 7 glasses of laudanum a day. He started taking drugs for a toothache he suffered while at Oxford University. The remedy worked, and eventually all his teeth fell out, and he had to live on liquids. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, cocaine user. He also had his most famous character, Sherlock Holmes, use it in The Sign of Fear. In The Sign of Four, I mean. Robert Louis Stevenson, cocaine addict. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was created completely under the influence of cocaine, which helped him write and twice revise the 60,000 word manuscript in 6 days. Charles Dickens, an opium user. Arthur Rimbaud, absinthe addict. Dante Gabriel Rossetti, morphine addict and alcoholic. Hunter S. Thompson, the creator of gonzo journalism, renowned for excessive alcohol, heroin, and cocaine abuse. Pennies from Heaven, the world's 10 highest earning dead artists. Elvis Presley, the king of royalties, 45 million per year. Charles Schultz, aka the I Know Nothing guy, 28 million per year. John Lennon, 20 million per year. Andy Warhol, 16 million per year. Theodore S. Griesel, aka Dr. Seuss, 10 million per year. Marlon Brando, 11.3 million per year. Marilyn Monroe, 8 million per year. J.R.R. Tolkien, 8 million per year. George Harrison, 7 million per year. And Johnny Cash, 7 million per year. That is the end of chapter 3. That is chapter 3, Courting the Muse of 5 People Who Died During Sex. You can buy it on Amazon for a little under $10. It is paperback. And please do like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one. It is currently thunderstorming. And it is currently the 29th of March when I'm recording this. That is why this is the 3rd episode of me wearing this shirt. Tomorrow I will be recording more. The remaining 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the remaining 6 chapters of this book, hopefully. If not, I'm going to be at least recording 3 chapters tomorrow. And this will be posted on Friday, the 4th of April. Please do like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!